Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the podcast.
We are the KarWells.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah, and we are, as you know, Airbnb interior designers and investors. Well, welcome back. It's Sarah and Emily, your favorite duo.
Okay, let's discuss first and foremost. You guys probably noticed that we rebranded the podcast. So we are now Catch Up with the Carwells, which I think is really catchy.
Catchy.
Yeah. So I love the new name, but essentially, if you follow us on Instagram, you probably saw our post. Pretty much, Sarah and I are crazy busy right now. We're both looking at getting new properties, which you guys will hear about in this episode as well. But we just reached capacity on what we were able to take on, and our workload got a little bit too much. So we have left or parted ways with Superhost Labs. We had a really good time and fun time working there. We learned a ton while we were working there, but we just have other things that we are prioritizing in our personal investing journey. So that is why there is a rebrand. I know we've been changing so many things in the past year. We're in what, year 3 of working together? There are probably going to be a million more changes that happen throughout this time. So please stick with us, you guys. I'm hoping that you're still getting like knowledge and value from what we're bringing to you as these changes are happening. And I know we seem a little fickle, but I promise we're just trying to figure it out.
We're trying to figure it out. Goodness. Oh my gosh. And like to back that up with Emily, capacity has been a big thing. I mean, I think for both of us, Superhost Labs taught us a ton. Like it was really truly like doing a crash course in real estate. And so it definitely brought a ton of value to us. It will continue bringing a ton of value to you guys. It's still a great investment. But I mean, for those of you out there who know or who run full-time social media channels of your own or brands of your own, I'm sure you're very aware of how much time it takes to build a brand. So I'm sure you can imagine how much time it takes to build two brands and then also try and grow your own real estate portfolio and help people on every single corner. So for Emily and I think it was just a moment where we were like, we need to reel this back and really be more selective with where we're spending a lot of our time because I think we took the let's go wide instead of deep approach. And by going wide, we kind of spread ourselves really thin.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Yeah, the amount of hair loss I've had in the past 7 months just trying to figure it out. Like I've said this a million times, I don't think you saw my face on KarWells for the past 7 months probably because I was
yeah.
so busy with everything else because it really is like it's a full-time job running one social media account. And we had how many? And we were trying to go on so many different platforms on both of our channels and it was just a lot. We spread ourselves too thin. We are known for taking on too much. Between the two of us.
My toxic trait is thinking that I have 72 hours in a day.
Impossible. It's just impossible. So,
Yeah. So here
yes.
we are rebranding again. So although you may see no more of our faces on the Superhost Labs channels, you will see way more of our faces on KarWells.
Lucky you.
And yeah, and I mean, really, our clientele before was the DIY client, right? It's the client who is just like us, who's bootstrapping it, who's doing it themselves, who's kind of starting from the ground up. And Superhost Labs clientele was investors who were not bootstrapping it, who had a ton of money but didn't have any time. And we ultimately just aren't as passionate about that client as we are the DIYer. So, for those of
Ooh.
you out there who are bootstrapping it with us, we're going to spend more time with you. We're going to cultivate that community a little bit more. So,
Yeah, we're all gonna go insane together.
yeah, yeah. Teaching you what kind of chaos goes on behind our scenes so you know what to expect when you start the chaos on your own.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, this episode is just Emily and I again. We're going to be talking a lot about the home buying process because Emily and I are both in phases of buying more properties for Airbnb. And so, we're going to dig into it so you get to see a little bit more of the backside of what that looks like because,
Yeah.
man, it's kind of chaotic. But
Specifically, kind of what I want to focus on today is running numbers in rural markets because I think that's kind of why people don't go into rural markets. We talked about it with Sandy. We talk about it all the time. Heck, we even talked about it with Superhost Labs, but it's hard to run numbers in rural markets. So we've been doing that constantly because we're looking at buying, and we're going to take you guys along that journey.
We're gonna deep dive on it.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'll let you start with yours, and then I've got lots to say about it because my eyes have been like bloodshot from the amount of numbers I've been running on properties here in
Oh my
Michigan.
gosh. Yeah. So Tyler and I kind of dove into looking for a house literally just a couple weeks ago. I think it was like right before we got our puppy that we were like, we're gonna buy a house. So we started looking, and we were looking for lake houses because in the Michigan market, lake houses are just fantastic. So, but looking in small towns, there's like no competition at this point in Michigan. There'll be like maybe five Airbnbs in that city, and you're running comps against people who either don't sleep the same number of people that you do because it's their family lake house and they're trying to sleep 16 people and then they're just renting it out whenever the family's not there, or it's grandma's house, so it's not well designed, it doesn't have a hot tub, all these things, right? So I'm looking all over. The west side doesn't have a ton. So Tyler and I saw on the east side near the Detroit area 7 properties in one day. And when I tell you, like some of these properties were an hour apart from each other. Matt, our realtor, was such a trooper that day. We drove all over the place. And some of them ran really well, like numbers that were really good because the comps that were also on the lake were doing really well, but maybe this house was just off the lake. So it's hard to compare apples to apples when it's not like you're sleeping this many people, you're on the same lake, it has the same amenities. Like it's really hard to run those numbers when you don't have a ton of competition that's exactly the market that you're like targeting. So specifically, the property that Tyler and I actually just got our offer accepted on
Whoop whoop.
yesterday. I could cry tears of joy. I'm so excited about this house. But it is in northern Michigan, Alpena specifically. And Alpena is a really nice area because it has like tons of touristy things to do. But when I tell you there's like two other Airbnbs in this area, I'm not lying. And I don't know if they're listed maybe on Verbo or they're listed in other areas, but running comps for properties that were within like the Alpena area for me, there was like nothing to compare it to. And there was like one that was actually on Lake Huron, but it didn't sleep the same number of people as ours and didn't have a hot tub and like just nothing was comparing apples to apples. So really the house that we got our offer accepted on, it's okay. It runs okay numbers, but not like amazing. But I'm like, come on. It's a gorgeous house. It's so cute. It doesn't need a ton of updates. There's these massive windows that have a view of the channel that goes right into Thunder Bay and Lake Huron. And so I was like, I'm pulling the trigger on this. It's gorgeous. I know that I can turn it into something beautiful. And it comes with a hot tub. So already I have that amenity when nobody else in the area has it. But like I'm telling you, there was like nothing to run it on. I think maybe there was one other property that was running okay numbers, but still less than like what this one is. I'm projecting this one to make.
Yeah. What do you think it'll make? Like, if you had to just, I mean, shoot from the hip and say, I
Oh
think I can pull in
gosh.
this amount of revenue.
Um,
Or I should, let's start with what is the best property doing in the area?
like 30 something
In the same size?
near there. It's like so none of them actually sleep this exact same amount from what I could tell. And like I said, I think that there has to be other properties that
Yeah.
just didn't pull up as comps. But it
Well,
was
here,
like,
I'm gonna run it while we're on here so we can just talk more in depth about it. What's the
yeah,
address? And it's a what, 3-2, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably gonna be able to sleep 10. I mean, it's a big property.
Eh, it the bedrooms are not massive.
Oh, well, that's okay. Here, hold on. Even at 8,
I think I put it at 8.
what I've noticed in Michigan is it doesn't seem, yeah, literally when you run it at 8 and when you run it at 10, they run the exact same numbers.
Yeah. I don't
But it
remember
it
I there
pulls 50,000.
it
Like,
was at like 48, but the other ones were not very high.
Yeah. Okay, so reasons why I would totally invest in this property too, and why I totally agree. I
Yeah.
think that you're
S-
pulling the
Some of the comps that are on there, I think, are just like mother-in-law suites or bedrooms that are like
yes.
rentable, not full
Yeah.
properties. So like
Yeah.
there's only like a couple actual full houses that you can rent. One of
Yeah.
them's really nice. It's
Okay,
like
so
right on Lake Huron. And
yep,
that's the
I'm
one that
looking
I
at yeah, the
compared
one
directly to. It has like
yep.
the like patio area as like its main photo.
Nope, the one that I'm looking at is the blue one that pulls like 89 a year.
How far away is that one?
It doesn't say. It says new listing, Life Aquatic on Lake Huron. So
Because
it's right on Lake Huron.
I think that I looked at that one too, but when I looked on Rabu, it was further away, like a decent distance away.
Okay.
Maybe
Would I
I'm
go to on
mistaking the ones that I was looking at. I looked at like 7 different properties that day on
yeah, no, I
Airbnb.
totally I mean, it looks like the numbers that this area is pulling is almost identical to the numbers that our lake house that we bought last year are pulling around us, and we're making more than that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like in Michigan when I was running numbers on 25 plus properties this past week, like even the worst properties were still pulling over a 13% cash on cash. So I think in comparison to the rest of the US, we're still getting kind of those unrealistic numbers that the rest of the US can't really get anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
we're like, oh, this, pencil's okay, but like in comparison, it pencil's great, you
Yeah.
know? But
Yeah.
yeah, that house is gorgeous, and you have the wow factor immediately with those windows.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I'm so
The
excited.
windows are so pretty.
Also, another thing that I'm kind of like running into because obviously our style is very different from what other people are typically looking for. And I want to make it this like moody cabin with like a dark wall. I want to paint the wall that the windows are on dark and then leave the wood on the sides and then have um like oranges, like deep oranges, deep blues, deep greens, like jewel tone kind of things with like mostly black. And I don't know if people are gonna want to rent that, even though it's gonna look gorgeous. But I don't know if people are gonna
Yeah,
want to rent that in Michigan. I don't know if Michigan people will want to rent that.
right, like, does it scream lake house or does it scream cabin in the woods?
I know, yeah.
Yeah, oh, I feel that so hard. I mean, the
Ooh.
property that we've already like, we're in the middle of closing on with Caleb and Sarah, it's the same thing, right? It's like, I wanna be dark and moody on all the properties too, like, you and I very much align on loving that aesthetic, and in that house, it's gonna be, like, light gray, tan, navy blue, like, very nautical, and it's, like, polar opposite of anything that, like, I would really attach to, but it's, like, what the house needs, you know?
I know, I know. I need to like walk through it again and make decisions on that because oh, I want to make it moody so bad.
I hear you. Oh, I hear you. But I mean, it's one of those things where this is our job. It's not our full-time house. And so it's like I can learn to love something that's not my aesthetic as long as it still is a beautiful aesthetic. Like I've never walked into a beautiful room and had it not be my style and been like, I don't like it. So as
Yeah.
long as it's beautiful, it's okay.
Yeah, I also am working with like some of the furniture that is existing in my place right now. I'm going to be using there because we just like might as well. It's all brand new. We just bought it when we moved in here anyways, and so I need to make sure that whatever I do works well with the furniture that I have existing, which is nice because
Yeah.
I know it's my style.
Yeah, and that sofa that you have in your apartment is literally my favorite thing. I have
Yeah,
dreams
that's
about that sofa.
definitely staying in the listing. Not the one downstairs, but the one upstairs is staying at the Airbnb. So,
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, yeah, I mean, I am in the process of purchasing 2 properties. We've got one that we're closing on right now that we are splitting with my brother and sister-in-law, and then we are still on the hunt for the one that Ethan and I will live in for the next year. It'll be our, 5% down with a conventional loan, and it's gonna be our primary house for a while as we kinda slowly flip it, and that one is seemingly becoming difficult. I don't know what it is, honestly, what's making this one so difficult. I think I'm overthinking it, and I was going into the first one with such optimism that I was willing to, like, overlook so much to just have a house.
Mhm.
And now that, like, I'm much more familiar with running numbers, like, we just have so much more knowledge under our belt, I'm, like, overthinking it. I'm, like, being so nitpicky about it when I just need to, like, get in there and start working on something and realize that, like, out of the 25 properties that we've run numbers on them, all of them are over a 20% cash on cash. Um, all of them would be great investments. All of them we'd make our money back on, but, like, here I am just, like, trashing every single one. There's, like, something wrong with every single one
Oh,
that's been, like, my fatal flaw that I've been like,
jeez. Like,
"Can't."
not fixable things?
Well, like, we walked in that house with Caleb and Sarah, and, like, we walked in, and immediately, I had to take 2 steps in that house, and I was like, "Yes." Like,
Mhm.
so simple. I was like, there's literally nothing here that's gonna be, like, a $30,000 fix." But we've just had some big, like, anxiety-ridden hiccups on a lot of these properties. So, like, we fell in love with the Isle Grey property. It didn't pull very well, but there, again, was nothing in the area, so I knew that we could make our money on it, but it didn't have a washer and dryer hookup, and it didn't have anywhere in the house
Mm.
that, like, had enough room for a washer and dryer hookup, and so that's I don't even know how much that would be to, like, try and
Mhm.
resolve, or it would just be, like, a constant pain in the butt having cleaners have to, like, run to and from laundry facilities. So that was a fatal flaw in one. I fell in love with another, and it was titled on the listing as Michigan's most remote lake. And the property itself, like, if we cut down 2 or 3 trees because it's in the woods, we would have, like, this immaculate view of the sunset. Like, it's like 2 Michigan mountains that kinda, like, come together, and then the
Yeah.
sun, like, literally sets in the crevice, and you just have,
Oh.
like, a direct view of just this insane sunset. And it's on a lake, and it's, like, got perfect spots um, for bonfires, and it's a 4-2, and it doesn't need a ton of work, and the property is, like, relatively new, and it's stone, and it's amazing. But the fatal flaw in that one was, 1, there is, like, 0 cell phone reception there. I called an internet company, and they're like, "We think we can get internet out there," and then to
Think.
get to the property yeah, think. I'm like, "I need more than think."
Mhm.
And then, like, from either direction, it's 5 miles of dirt road, and we have, 6 months out of the year that that's gonna need to be plowed, and so that one was a no-go. And then 2 days ago, we found this little tiny 2-1. It was a little A-frame, and it was 15 minutes from Torch Lake, 25 minutes from Boyne Mountain, and it was $122,000, and I was like,
Oh, that one you sent. Oh, it's
it's
so
so
cute.
cute. It was so cute. And so we put in an offer before we even looked at the house. We offered 150 because there was already 4 offers in that day. And so usually when, a house is listed and it's already getting offers immediately, that's like a pretty good sign that it's a good property. So we put in an offer, but I was like, look, I still want to run up there and see it. Like, I cannot buy a property at this point sight unseen. And, so we drive 2.5 hours up there, and, like, for a 3-mile radius around the house, there's just, like, the most rundown trailers you've ever seen. Like, trailers
Mhm.
that look like they've been abandoned for years, and they're, like, covered in moss and dirt, and then we're, like, touring the property, and we were like, "We might be able to get past the trailers, I don't know, this is a cabin in the woods, so it's kind of the vibe." But then we're, like, walking around the property, and there's, like, these 2 huge gunshots as we're touring the property, and I'm inside, and Ethan's outside, and I hear the gunshots, and I'm not kidding you, it sounds like the gun had went off, like, right behind the house, and I
Oh
was
my
like
gosh.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, my husband's dead." Like,
Oh, shit.
I was like, "This is it." Like, I run outside, and I, like, look, and Ethan's like he's, like, just, like, stunned, like, standing there, and I was like, "Look, like, this is obviously hunter haven out here, like, all of these trailers are clearly hunting cabins." Like, the cabin itself
Mhm.
that we were touring was, like, obviously a hunting cabin. We walk in, and there's, like, a double barrel shotgun, like, sitting right inside the front
Oh,
door.
jeez, yeah.
And, they've got, like, coffee containers full of, like, empty bullet shells as, like, decoration. And,
Cute.
so Ethan and I were like, like, I don't think this would be good, like, for yeah, I mean, a lot of the traffic that we get is, like, Chicago traffic, right? I don't think Chicago people are gonna be, like, comfortable driving into, like, those trailers and having guns go off all around them, so we said no.
Well, Not hunting guns. Chicago people might be used to gunshots.
Yeah. Just not the same kinda yeah, no, it wasn't a vibe. It wasn't a welcome to your tiny cabin in the woods that's, like, super serene and amazing. It was like, "This is sketch." So he said no, and then Ethan found this amazing double A-frame on the river, and again, it was down a dirt road, but we're kinda, like, okay with the dirt road thing at this point because Michigan is, like, so dirt road heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But they have this deck on the front of the A-frame that is, like, literally the size of Texas. I mean, the deck is, like it's, like, bigger than the floor plan of the house. It's so big, and it's not, like, kind of warped. It, like, looks, like, hilly warped.
Oh no. I was gonna say a good deck is like in your head, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. People spend so much time outside in the summer. Big deck, check.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it was and I mean, this deck is like there's no shade covering the deck, so it's not even really, like, usable. Like,
Mm,
unless you were I mean, if you're out there at night and you're right by the river, I'm sure there's a million bugs. And then if you're out there any time of day, it doesn't like, we were there, mid-morning, and it was just the sun was beaming down on that deck, so it wasn't, like, a really comfortable or, like, functional deck anyway. And so altogether and the garage needed to be finished out, like, for it to actually hold the amount of people it needed to hold for it to pull the numbers that we wanted it to, and so we were, like, comping it, and we were like, "This is gonna cost us, like, $100,000 cash for renovations alone, like, you can't finance that stuff." So, we said no to it, and so we're back to the drawing board.
oh no. Oh, that's the thing. It's like my thing when I was like running all these numbers was, are people actually going to come here? Like, I believe in the Michigan market so much. We both do, and we love it here. But like, do people actually go to Alpena? But then I'm like, people go to Bitely. Like, people go to
People
your
are
lake.
going to Miley,
People are going to
like
Bitely, and like Alpena has so much stuff to do. There's like a clear bottom boat shipwreck tour. They have a lighthouse tour. They have farmers markets every weekend in the summer, like concerts. They have tons like stuff that I didn't know about. I was like, I've never even freaking heard of Alpena before I
Right,
found this
right.
house. And literally it was just like the listing that I saw and I was like, wow, that's incredible. Let me look up this town. And I'm hoping that other people have that same reaction, but that's the thing about an untapped market that's so scary to get into is because you don't know if people are actually going to go there. You have to create the thing that gets people to go there.
Yeah. Well, and, like, my kind of like, roundabout strategy or, like, feeling confident in any sort of a purchase so far, now that we've run so many numbers on so many properties, is like on AirDNA, they'll give you like an average, right? They'll take all the lowest properties, they'll take the highest properties, they'll give you an average, and that's kind of the number that it spits out. But like we know that we're going to be competing in the 99th percentile, right? Like we're
Yeah.
not going to cut corners. It's going to be professionally designed. Like the competition here is not like the competition in Scottsdale where you have to have like a Barbie cutout box for people to like
Right.
have this like huge Instagrammable moment, right? Like it's relatively simple to like get into that 99th percentile. And so for me, I'll instead of using the rentalizer tool, I'll go one down and click on top properties and it'll show you the top performing properties in the surrounding area. And so you get to look at how many people like you just get an idea of what's setting them apart in that market. And a lot of times right now it's just like number of heads that you can fit in the property, which is
Mm-hmm.
like how people were pulling the most amount out of their property 3 years ago in a lot of other more developed markets.
Yeah.
So, I think if we like, for us, we're watching much more developed markets and how design and amenities are impacting those markets, and we're seeing that with properties here, even though nobody's done it yet.
Yeah, because like it really is like if you look at the comps, who sleeping the most number of people in Michigan, because like I said, it's like their family lake house. Like if you look at the photos, there's like three sets of bunk beds in one room and a queen bed and a bunk bed in another room, and then the living room has pull out beds. Like literally, it's just their family lake house that they're like, oh, hey, we can make some money on this any other time. And
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's what I'm competing with. And they're only sleeping that many people because that's what their
It's
family
their
needs to
family
sleep
lake house.
anyways. Like,
Yeah. They've got a basement with 18 beds in it. And we've
yeah.
stayed at like, our friends have those properties,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's our childhood, but, like, no, like, that's not our market, so
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I've been I mean, if you guys have been watching us on our Instagram, you know I have been closely stalking this, like, gorgeous museum-like property in Cadillac, Michigan.
Oh my gosh. I saw that on Zillow when I was scrolling through it and I was like, what is that? It looks like the
Right?
photo looks like an amusement park or something.
Yeah. It looks like I mean, like, the Hackley and Hume houses in Muskegon,
Oh
it
my
looks
gosh, I
like the
love
same
those.
architect did that.
I love the Hackley and Hume houses.
They're amazing. They're literally a piece of work, like,
Yeah.
artwork. This property is a piece of art. I think so if I were to pull the trigger on this property, because I'm not setting it aside yet, I revisited running numbers on it this morning.
Oh my gosh.
I ran numbers on it because right now it's listed as a 3-3, but it's a 4,000 square foot 3-3, which like, they don't have great pictures of the property, right? Like, they've got some decent pictures, but, like, you don't get to see the garage if you could finish it out. You don't really get an idea of, like, where the office or, like, bonus rooms sit in the house, and so I ran it this morning as a 5-3 instead of a 3-3, thinking that if a couple of the bonus rooms could be turned into bedrooms, like, they've still got a ton of, like, space for other activities, right? Like the pool table and everything that we would obviously add in.
Hmm.
And if it's a 5-3, it pulls like around 120,000. And the properties that are pulling 120,000 don't have a pool, don't have a hot tub, aren't well designed, aren't that property.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. And the
so I think
outdoor
I'm
area looks
bullish.
crazy. Like
The outdoor area is insane.
you could do so much. Like it's already cool. Like you could
Yeah.
make it even cooler.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the properties that are pulling, like, 120 that are similar size, that are like a 5-3 or, a 4-3 or whatever, they are on the lake, but this property is, like, 2 blocks from the lake and 2 blocks like, you can walk to the public access to the lake. So you can walk to the beach where they could be at the lake anyway, and the
Hmm.
properties that are pulling that amount obviously don't have a saltwater pool at the property. So it's like
Mm.
you have a lake and a pool and
Yeah.
a hot tub, and you're
Oh.
within walking distance of all the bars and restaurants. And so I'm just like, in my gut, know that I could like make this property into like the property that if you're getting married in Cadillac, this is where you're like booking for your,
Yeah.
your bachelorette party or whatever. So,
Like what we did
um,
for your and Ethan's wedding. Like
right,
all of us just packed into that house. It had a
right.
pool. It was like in the most random place, but
Yeah.
it was so fun at that house.
Yes, so fun, and the location is just insane. I mean, Cadillac is really cute, so I'm hoping I would have to partner on it, I would have to bring in another investor to do it because we couldn't purchase the property on our own, but, um, the investor, Matt, our realtor also, who would be the investor that we would work with, he's super risky, right?
Oh yeah.
He's like very familiar with real estate. Obviously, he owns a brokerage and a lending company and like 14 Airbnbs or something like that. And so he like yesterday I texted him and I was like, I think I'm pretty bullish on this orange property still. And he's like, I like the energy. He's like, let's talk tomorrow and convince me of it. And I'm like, can't wait for that
Stop.
conversation.
No, literally, Matt really is. And it's so nice to see somebody who like is kind of, well, I think we're risky in general from being in the Michigan market. I just think that that's like a risk in general, and I'm not a risk taker, so it's really wild that I'm doing this. But
Right.
when him and I were and Tyler were touring properties, and I think he sent you a photo of this one, or at least tagged you in a photo on Instagram. But there was this lake house, and the yard was trashed. Like you completely needed to redo the landscaping in the yard, take out trees. The inside of the house was super mid-century modern, but so old. Like the carpet in like so it's a split level, and the where you walk in was like a decent size, and then you go up and the bedrooms are all up there and they're fine, and normal bedrooms have big windows though. But then you go downstairs and it's like pea green carpet, and the light switch covers are like this really ornate horrible light switch cover. The
Hasn't been
chandeliers
touched
are
since the
bad.
30s.
Yeah, the chandeliers are bad. The like there was still some furniture in there, and the chairs, I would kind of loved them. I think that they could be made into something really cool, but they're really like gothic looking. And I was like, this place is old, old. Like it smelled old. And he was like,
Yeah.
Emily, if you guys don't get this one, I think I might go for it. And I was like, I'm not ready in my investing journey to take on that much of a project. I'm going for my first one. Literally, the Alpina house needs like carpet, want to redo the deck, and I'm painting and then furnishing
Yeah.
it. Like it doesn't need that much more stuff. That place needed so much work, but it was
Yeah.
gorgeous. Like the way the property was set up, the fireplace that was there, the windows to the outside, it was on a nice lake. They were literally opening a bar, like you could see the bar on like kitty corner from the property on the lake that they were just opening, and I'm like, this would be a perfect place. But and he
Yes.
was like, I think I might go
Yes.
for it. You guys don't. And I was like, you
Yeah.
go for it, Matt, because this is not my vibe right now.
Dude. Dude, he's wild. Like, he sent me this one because we've been toggling back and forth. I mean, we're trying to decide. Like, I want to partner with Matt for so many reasons, right? I mean, he's got a lot of experience. He's a lot of fun. He seems like he'd be great to work with. Um, which, I mean, for those of you listening who are trying to find partners, like, that can be difficult in and of itself, right? To like find
Hmm.
people who are like not only like willing to put in a bunch of money and take a risk on something, but like have the same vision as you. But Matt's been sending me, so basically he's like, looking for properties all day long. We have this giant Excel file with like a gazillion properties, and I'll run the numbers on them. Like I kind of do the deep dive. I'll be like, look, Matt, give me 18 of them. I'll tell you the three that I would invest in. And so he sends this one, and it's like we've been tossing back and forth on whether it makes the most sense to go in together on a really large moneymaker property like the Orange property, or if it makes more sense to buy like a cluster of tiny homes. And so he sends me this property that's like on the coast of Lake Michigan. It's amazing. There's like several like multi-bedroom homes, so it's not even a cluster of tiny homes. The price point is under $1 million for like several homes, but these homes, Emily, are so run down. Like
Oh,
they like, all of them need to be completely gutted. Every
oh,
single one of them needs,
jeez.
like, a complete gut and redo, and I'm like, "Matt, this is, like, such a project." He's like, "Well, I've just I've got teams of construction workers that can, like, go out there and do it," and I'm like, "That's fine, but, like, if I'm project managing this is, like, a huge, like, I don't even know where to start. Like, where how many teams do I have? How many people? What's the budget? Like, I don't even know how to price out something at that scale. So I think
Yeah.
we've decided to like reel it back. Let's start with a smaller bite. And also I think like ultimately when I'm looking at it, I'm like, I want the least amount of work on the back end, which in my opinion is like even if the big house made a little bit less, it's gonna require less because you're not having six different groups of people check in on a Friday night.
Yeah. That sounds fun, but no.
Yeah, it
Literally,
sounds fun, but no.
yeah, like literally I said this before, my dream is to have like a property with a bunch of storage container homes on it. But
Hmm.
and I just think because it'd be cool, it's like an experience for people to go to, whatever, have like little rooftops with fire pits and hot
Yeah.
tubs and like the whole thing because I would want it to be like in Michigan.
Yeah.
But if it's not like if there's like a common area, sometimes you'll have like a big group and people just want to stay separately, but sometimes it's going to be all separate people checking in, and that check-in process with that many different like I'm not going to want to handle that on my own. That'll be a
Right.
when I'm willing to like push it off to a management company because I'm so overwhelmed, that's when I'll want to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, you bring up a good point there. Yes. Like, that's the only way it makes sense, is if it makes so much more than a large one single family home that you can hire a manager for it.
Mhm.
And even then, it's like, but
It
why?
still
Like, isn't
cuts
it?
into your profit.
Yeah, it still cuts into your profit. There's still more moving parts. You're still gonna have more to handle when, shit does hit the fan and all of a sudden, like, you've got to be brought in. And then I think it's harder to sell.
Yeah, it's more of like a this is my dream thing to do, and we have enough properties that are making us stable money that like let's just do it because it's fun and it's a fun place for people to go kind of a
Yeah.
thing to where like if we don't make that much on it, it's still a cool place, that
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, and, like, Heather Blankenship talks about that all the time. She's like, people will, like, step over, like, RV parks and mobile home parks and glamping situations, because the big single family homes are sexier. And although I agree, I think the big family homes are way sexier and they do make less cash flow, we don't talk about enough about the back end operations of it again. Like, we were camping last week in the UP and we, like, met this guy who, like, owned 20% of the campground, right? He had an investor that, like, bought the campground, maintains it, yada, yada, but he, like, does all the operations and they split it 80-20. And he was talking about, like, how intense every single day is checking in and checking people out. He's like, "I don't even have time to, like, look at other investments because all day long I'm operating this place. Like, it
Oh my
takes me
gosh.
all day, every day to run this place." And I was like, "No.
Yeah, I can't
No."
imagine because I worked at a campground. I was the person who was taking reservations, checking people into their campsites, showing them where they were. Like I didn't actually set up like the way it looked or like what how many campsites there were or setting anything like that up, but every day I was taking phone calls, setting up campground or campsites for people, checking them in. It's a lot. And then
Yeah.
anytime somebody had
Yeah.
a question or needed to come to the front, luckily there was like a maintenance guy on site or like some guy who would go out and help them if they needed like help hooking stuff up. But it's a lot of work for a
Yeah.
person to have to do that.
Yeah. And like you Heather was like, "Look, if you're gonna get a property with, like, 10, like, glamping sites or 10 RV sites or whatever on it," she's like, "You almost need it to be double that size because at 10, you don't even make enough money to hire someone for it to make sense. So then you're, like, bound to this situation, and then when you're, like, operating something that's 20, like, okay, yeah, you could get someone to, like, operate it for you and, like, train them but, like, what does that retraining process look like? Like, when somebody steps away, how specific is that person that you're looking for to actually run this thing? So,
Yeah.
I think
Also, I
that
want to do some like there's also the option of, and this is just because I've been like scouring Airbnb lately. In Michigan, there is a property. It's called like a tree house, but it's just a storage container that has been turned into a property that's lifted and it like they put it in the woods and so it kind of looks like a tree house, but it sleeps two people. It's a one bedroom, one bathroom, tiny living room, huge windows, but they make so much money on this property. It's been in Architectural Digest and a couple
yeah,
other like architectural magazines. This one property that sleeps two people. I can only imagine how much money they make, and they're only checking in two people at a
2
time.
people. Yeah.
So why not
Yeah.
just do something so luxury, but only one group of people is checking in? And it still
Yep.
can be like a unique experience, right? Like it can still
Right.
be a storage container, it can still be a tree house, a yurt like Zoe does. Like it can still be something cool that kind of like gets the creative itch that like I would want out without
Yeah.
having to have all of the moving parts of having like seven different storage containers on
Yeah.
one property.
Yeah. That should be the first, like, Carwell one,
Oh my gosh, that'd be
Like, cause
so
that
fun.
that project is gonna take a year,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, to, like, find it's I mean, you're developing it, you got a ground up situation, but,
Mm-hmm.
like, a ground up situation that was tiny like that, 1, obviously, you're not gonna have the same appreciation that you would on a single family home, right? Like, 2, it's a
Mm-hmm.
bigger risk, like, to sell that property, it's gonna be more difficult than a single family home, but again, like, the cash flow is so much more, and I think for you and I, like, we very much align on, like, the creative side or the artistic side having a heavier weight than it probably does for most investors,
Oh yeah.
just because we just get more giddy about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm also just thinking of like technicalities. Like there were like two full wall windows, but it's Michigan and in the winter that'd be freezing. But there is a specific glass you can get that's insanely expensive that will keep it still warm on the inside, like it doesn't let the cold in like a normal window would.
yeah.
But like it's such a higher upfront lift time wise, but also money wise
Yep,
putting
yep.
into something like that. So it really has to be like a passion project more than like a we're gonna make a ton of money on this project.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that that would be a
So fun.
it well, it would be so fun. We would be so passionate about it, but also it would be, like, such a branding piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Broomy on TikTok who has that, like, that
Oh, the
not a
tiny
container
home?
home. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody, like, mistakes it for a container home because it's, like, the exterior material that she used is so similar to what a container looks like, but,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, she put a 500,000 into that property. It was somewhere between 4 and $500,000, and I mean, she charges a premium for it. It probably would be maybe hard to sell. I don't know. I mean, Airbnb is growing, so that's such a problem for another day. But she's chosen to like brand herself in that way, right?
Yeah.
It's like definitely a slower grow, but like how exciting, how
Yeah.
amazing that you
And I
own this
think
like
that
statement piece.
yeah, and I think we're going like say down the road we did something like that and we did want to sell it. We're kind of in the best time where we're moving into a space where they're selling Airbnbs.
Right,
Like you can sell an Airbnb as a business, so it's not the same as selling a single family home. You could sell a storage container lot as an
right.
Airbnb business, and like you can get loans for buying a business like that. So,
Right. Right. Yeah, before we kinda wrap up here, I saw on Rawbuilt's, Instagram the other day, they were like, "Do you sell," or like, "When Airbnb sell, do they sell as a business?" And he was, like, opposite of my opinion, which no hate to him, right? Everybody has their opinion on how Airbnb should
mm,
be sold, but he was like, "Unless you're buying, like, several Airbnbs," he's like, "Do not buy an Airbnb for more than the house appraises for." And I could not agree less. Like, when you think about, like, the amount of money like, if it comes fully furnished, and it
mm-hmm.
comes fully designed, and it comes fully operational, and the team is already built, and the listing's already built, and the marketing's already done, and,
You
like
probably already have bookings if they're running
yeah,
it correctly.
like, to ask for, like, between 50 and $100,000 for that package, I do not think it's crazy. Like, I think it's crazy to have to sell it for the price of the house, right?
Yeah, no, that's wild to think that.
Yeah,
Then why wouldn't you just go buy a house and do it yourself?
flip it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's kind of a controversial like, it's still controversial in the space. Obviously, we are seeing them sell for a premium. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Subaru Slabs is doing that all day long. But yeah, it's definitely controversial in the space. And I mean, honestly, I think that if we ever created something like that, we would be so emotionally attached to it that we wouldn't sell it until we were like cashing out, and we'd be
Oh
selling all
yeah.
of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I feel exactly the
Yeah.
same.
Beautiful. Well, I think that's all we have to cover today. I have to
Yeah.
run and go open up a bank account for our first partnership deal, so, wish us luck on that, but,
Yeah. And we'll
um
keep you guys updated as we are finding properties. Like I said, my offer got accepted, so I'm now in the process of inspections and appraisals and things that I have literally no clue about. So I am learning so much right now. But
yes.
yeah, so we're figuring it out and hoping to take you guys along. We will still be having guests on here, just so everybody knows. We have a few episodes coming up that we'll be filming with guests, but yeah, I think some of these are going to be more me and Sarah just kind of talking about our journey. So super
Yeah, get
exciting.
to
You'll get
know
to know
us
us
a little
more.
more. Um,
Yes.
yes, 100%. And also all of you who have hung out with us and watched us go through now 2 rebrands this year. Here's we're pulling the curtain back on the truth about entrepreneurship and just the different seasons that you go through. So, thank you guys for sticking with us. Thank you for being so excited for us. We just had an outpouring of love yesterday that felt really good as we kind of step into this new chapter. So, just a big thank you. You guys are, you bring us a lot of joy throughout the week. So we appreciate you and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.